What if RFK Jr. beat Joe Biden in the 2024 Democratic primary? The 2024 Democratic primary is shaping up to be one of the most consequential and unpredictable races in recent memory. While many believe the path is set for President Joe Biden to secure renomination as the incumbent, what if an unforeseen political upset occurs? Imagine a scenario where Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a member of America's most storied political dynasty, defeats Biden and becomes the Democratic Party's nominee. What would this mean for the party's future, voter dynamics, and the broader political landscape? Let's dive into this speculative discussion and consider the profound implications. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. remains a familiar and polarizing figure in American politics. As the son of RFK and a member of the illustrious Kennedy family, his candidacy carries a legacy intertwined with Democratic Party history. However, RFK Jr. is no traditional candidate. While his family name evokes thoughts of progressivism and idealism, his political trajectory has placed him at odds with the party's establishment. RFK Jr. rose to prominence as an environmental advocate and crusader against corporate greed, winning admiration for his fight to protect natural resources. Yet, his outspoken views on vaccines and public health, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, have drawn criticism and alienated some voters. While his positions appeal to segments of the electorate who value skepticism of government and corporate agendas, they also create a sharp divide among Democrats. A candidacy like RFK Jr.'s poses a critical question. Could his ability to resonate with anti-establishment voters and tap into populist energy outweigh his polarizing stances? To understand this, we must first review the position of his opponent, President Joe Biden. As the sitting president and leader of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden's renomination in 2024 seems almost assured. Biden embodies decades of political experience, having served as a senator, vice president, and now the commander-in-chief. He represents the party's establishment, a steady hand leading through turbulent times. Biden has critical achievements to his name, from infrastructure investments to significant economic recovery initiatives that stabilize the post-pandemic economy. Yet his presidency has faced growing criticism. His advanced age, at 81 years old in 2024, raises concerns about stamina and vitality. Furthermore, segments of the progressive wing and grassroots Democrats have expressed frustration over what they perceive as lukewarm approaches to climate change, healthcare reform, and other urgent issues. Biden's approval ratings have hovered at modest levels, revealing a base that may not be fully energized about his re-election. Disillusionment among younger voters, those demanding institutional reforms, and swing voters skeptical of establishment politics, creates an opportunity for a challenger, even if such an upset appears improbable. Here lies RFK Jr.'s unlikely but theoretically possible path to victory. In this speculative world, let's imagine RFK Jr. leveraging his Kennedy legacy, environmental credentials, and populist tone to mount a successful insurgent campaign. He taps into voter concerns about political stagnation and a disconnect between the ruling class and everyday Americans. What motivates Democrats and independents to abandon Biden, a sitting president? Here are a few possibilities. First, anti-establishment sentiment grows stronger within the electorate, eerily mirroring the Republican experience with Donald Trump in 2016. Disillusionment with business-as-usual politics pushes voters to consider alternatives who promise disruption and reform. RFK Jr., with his willingness to challenge institutional orthodoxy, even within his own party, embodies this energy. Second, a generational shift could fuel RFK Jr.'s momentum. Biden's advanced age and image as a traditional Washington insider might alienate younger progressive voters who feel unrepresented. Meanwhile, RFK Jr.'s appeals to grassroots activism and ideals rooted in his family's legacy strike a chord. Finally, Biden's challenges in energizing the Democratic base could open pathways for RFK Jr. to integrate unlikely coalitions of voters. These might include rural subsets of Democrats, independents disaffected by both parties, and even some crossover appeal among Republican-leaning populists. With these dynamics at play, RFK Jr. emerges victorious, a shocking political earthquake few believed possible. But the question remains, what next? The immediate impact of an RFK Jr. victory would be felt within the Democratic Party itself. Traditionally, the party strives for unity behind a sitting president seeking re-election. RFK Jr.'s win would disrupt this tradition and expose deeper fault lines within the Democratic coalition. The divide between establishment Democrats and populist, progressive factions becomes more apparent. RFK Jr.'s candidacy could reveal existing tensions over key policies, including healthcare, climate change, and corporate regulation. Traditional Democratic values might clash with RFK Jr.'s controversial positions on health and medical freedom, leaving party leaders grappling with a redefined political identity. Additionally, his victory could deepen regional, generational, and ideological splits within the party. Younger activists might view his insurgent message as a breath of fresh air, while older Democrats, who have long relied on moderates like Biden, could see his rise as destabilizing. Perhaps most significantly, RFK Jr.'s candidacy could embolden other outsider or anti-establishment movements, threatening to fracture the Democratic Party into factions. The unity necessary to compete in a closely divided general election might feel increasingly elusive. Stepping beyond the primary battle, we face a critical question. How would a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. general election campaign fare against a Republican nominee like Donald Trump or another candidate? The hurdles are massive. For one, RFK Jr. would need to attempt unification of a fractured Democratic Party. His controversial views on vaccines and public health could alienate core constituencies such as urban liberals, public sector workers, and healthcare professionals, who might view his positions as fundamentally at odds with science-based governance. Without consistent support from Democrats, RFK Jr.'s chances to perform well nationally could dwindle rapidly. Next comes his electability with independents and Republicans. While RFK Jr.'s anti-establishment rhetoric might attract disaffected voters from outside the Democratic base, many swing voters might find his views on certain issues too polarizing. Would voters prioritize his environmental activism and vision of reform? Or would his controversial stances become a major liability? Finally, RFK Jr. would face attacks not only from Republicans but also from the Democratic establishment. Critics within his own party might highlight his divisive policies, undermining his ability to present a unified front. This could allow the GOP to seize on intra-party divisions and reinforce narratives of Democratic chaos. If RFK Jr.'s victory tells us anything, it's that the political landscape in America is undergoing a seismic shift. His potential rise would echo Donald Trump's strategy in 2016, a populist, anti-establishment figure rising against traditional party elites. But while Trump succeeded in reshaping Republican politics, could RFK Jr. similarly redefine progressivism? His candidacy would highlight a growing trend of dissatisfaction with conventional, establishment-driven politics. Both Democrats and Republicans appear to be wrestling with questions of identity, populism, and grassroots movements. A shifting political focus on outsider candidates could reflect changing priorities for voters increasingly skeptical of elites and conventional governance. Furthermore, RFK Jr. would raise questions about the role of family legacy in modern politics. While the Kennedys have historically been revered as icons of Democratic leadership, would his controversial positions tarnish or redefine that legacy? The Kennedy name may serve him well with older voters nostalgic for the past, but its influence could be passive for future generations unanchored to history. An RFK Jr. victory would unleash a torrent of reactions from key players across the political spectrum. Within the Democratic establishment, shock and alarm would dominate the discourse. Party leaders, accustomed to unity behind incumbents, would likely scramble to assess their strategy. Would they support RFK Jr.'s candidacy wholeheartedly, or would quiet divisions hinder his campaign? Media outlets, too, would amplify the controversy surrounding his positions. Coverage would likely alternate between fascination and critique, questioning his fitness to lead given his stand on public health issues. On the Republican side, RFK Jr.'s rise could either confuse or excite GOP strategists. His vulnerability on vaccines and divisive political tone could give Republicans the ammunition to attract moderate Democrats while portraying RFK Jr. as too radical for mainstream America. Strategists might adapt their messaging to consolidate their base while attempting to win over centrist voters skeptical of RFK Jr.'s policies. At its core, RFK Jr.'s hypothetical victory over Joe Biden in the 2024 Democratic primary represents a moment of disruption. It would challenge the norms of U.S. politics, force divides within the Democratic Party into the open, and spark intense debates about leadership, ideology, and the future of both major political parties. For RFK Jr., his campaign would either represent a redefining moment of modern progressivism or force him into an uneasy balancing act, attempting to satisfy distrustful moderates while holding together a fractured coalition of Democrats craving change. For voters, the scenario underscores an increasingly relevant set of choices: establishment governance versus populist disruption. It challenges us to consider how much risk we're willing to embrace to see political reform and whether candidates like RFK Jr., with complex profiles, can ultimately rise beyond the controversies they create. What about you? Would RFK Jr.'s potential victory be a turning point for the better or a detour into political chaos? Let's discuss and debate the implications of this fascinating what-if scenario. Like and subscribe for more from History Twist. Don't forget to request your own video in the comments.